How to start a new restaurant business? We're going to answer that question in this video. Okay, let's rock. Let's talk about how to start a new restaurant business. Okay, the first thing I want you to do is make sure you subscribe to this channel, because in previous videos, I've dived deep into all the things, all the paperwork, licensing, permits, and things like that that you're going to need to set up to start any business, including a restaurant business. So I'll run down a few of them. Registering your business entity number with the Secretary of State, setting up your EIN number, setting up payroll, getting your insurance, okay, getting all your sales tax certificates, permits, licenses, all this stuff is stated in previous videos, so please look into that. Those are the basics that you're going to need to set up any business, including a restaurant business. Okay, so now I've brought a special guest on this show. This is my longtime dear friend, Jonathan Dallin. Hey, thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you being able to come on the show and share your wisdom and your experiences with all the viewers about all these people wanting to start restaurants. I love restaurants. As a guy, I love food and I love tasting new food. So for all of you that are wanting to start a new business, I hope to someday be able to come to your business and try your awesome food. So John is going to be the one, the expert, the resident expert that we're going to lean on, that's going to help you out with things you need to consider and plan for to start a restaurant business. So John, welcome. What would you like to start with?
I think I'll start with the absolute most important thing. Of course, in addition to everything you said, location. The location of your business is by far trumps the beginning of everything.
For a restaurant
business.
business.
Absolutely. Where you have to figure out, where am I going to have this business? What are the demographics of this? How large or small of a business are you going to have? Like for me, my first restaurant was a 200-seat restaurant, brick and mortar.
That's not bad.
No, it was a pretty large restaurant. So it takes a lot to be able to do a business that large. So within that, the location affects all the rest of your decisions. When you're buying your equipment, how much equipment do you need to buy? When you're buying chairs to sit people in, how many chairs do you have to buy? Tables, same concept. How big is your bar? All these things, when we're designing and starting a restaurant, all are affected by the location.
Those are your furniture, fixtures, and equipment in a sense, right? So he's talking about planning a lot of your supplies budget. You're going to need to have a pretty nice sizable budget if you're opening up a restaurant. For what? I mean, let's go like refrigerators, coolers, what other stuff?
If you're buying all new equipment, and a lot of people in the restaurant industry end up buying some used equipment because there's a lot of it out there. Let's face it, like we've talked about in other videos, 80% of restaurants fail in their first year.
Gosh, that's such a sad stat.
So sometimes you're able to buy some kitchen equipment pennies on the dollar. Sometimes you're not. But you do definitely need a hefty dollar amount. I think on the first kitchen that I did, we spent about $170,000 just for equipment in the kitchen.
Wow.
Yeah, so from all of our stoves, all of our sinks. There's a lot of other things that come involved when you're buying these. For instance, we have to meet certain requirements. So part of starting a new business, you're going to obviously have to be inspected by the health department. So when the health department comes in, you have to have everything so far off the ground. Your coolers have to all operate correctly. Everything needs a thermometer in it. Your dishwasher must sanitize things properly. So all these things are things people don't really think about when they're starting a restaurant, or they don't know about.
I would have never thought about that stuff. Did you just say, what did you say about the dishwasher?
Well, your dishwasher, so there's a couple different kinds. Just to go really fast. You could either sanitize with heat, or you could sanitize with bleach or chlorine. And you have cold water and hot water. So what you're doing is obviously killing any bacteria. But people don't understand there's multiple ways of doing that. Again, that's just one simple item of making sure you're following code of the restaurant.
So let's run down for the viewers, because a lot of these viewers probably are in the process of saving up, trying to get their first restaurant going, and we want to try to cover the basis for them, right? So you've talked about furniture, fixtures, and equipment and things like that. What other kind of things do they need to really consider? What are like deal killers if they don't get these things set up soon enough?
Well, within the location, obviously, you want to make sure your concept fits your area. you don't want to be opening a same style restaurant a block away maybe from another restaurant.
So no Italian restaurant across from another Italian restaurant kind of thing, right?
That could cause some problems. I mean, you might really make another restaurant owner upset or another business owner, but you know, if your food's that much better, it is what it is. But I wouldn't recommend doing that.
Right.
But within your concept, and then next comes your menu, and then your menu price. How much am I charging for certain items? Well, again, that's all affected by the location and the demographics. Can I put a upscale steakhouse in the middle of a maybe lower income area? Maybe I shouldn't do that. I need to be looking for a location where the demographics meet my menu pricing better.
Right. So basically, you wouldn't want to put an upscale restaurant in a neighborhood that's, say, lower class because they can't afford your food, in a sense, right? I mean, it is what it is. I mean, so these are things you have to plan for. So you might be super excited and you might say, oh my gosh, I know I'm a great chef and I'm going to have these high ticket menu items and whatever, but I can get cheap rent over there. Well, the problem is where you're getting the cheap rent, most of the people can't afford to eat dinner or eat lunch with you, right?
Yeah.
And that could be a reason for your downfall, right?
And again, that all is going to depend on the size of your establishment as well. Maybe you're making your establishment to have a price per person of $10 to $12 as opposed to say, hey, we want a $35 ticket average per person.
Wow.
Which is your steakhouse versus your sit down, maybe eating a classic burger from somewhere.
Sure.
You know.
And that's a huge difference. So let's talk about a couple other key things that if you're starting any business, including a restaurant business, that you've really got to start planning and learning how to get involved with. And that would be, I would think, if we're talking about brick and mortar locations right now for a restaurant. So if you're trying to create a business, a food business from your home, this probably won't apply to you unless you're going to eventually move to this, this direction. But that would be like, you're going to eventually sign a lease, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of scary, right? Tell me about your first lease you signed.
First lease I signed was a 3-year lease. It was $6,700 a month.
Woo!
Just doesn't pay for anything else. Still got to pay for the gas. When you got to run that air conditioner all summer long, it gets expensive.
And don't forget about payroll. I mean, payroll's not cheap, right?
Yeah, I think my average payroll was around $10,000 every 2 weeks.
Wow, so about $20,000+ a month.
And for an establishment that size, roughly around again 200 seats, you're between 40 and 50 employees between the back of the house and front of the house.
So remember, he said that he had about 200 people seated, and you had 40 to 50 employees for a 200-person restaurant, right?
Correct.
Roughly
Spread out between again the back and the front, and maybe different shifts.
Right. So that's the chefs, that's the hosts, right? That's the waiters,
bartenders,
waitresses, managers.
dishwashers. Yep, just everybody. There's a lot of seats, a lot of positions to fill.
So I like that he used those numbers, because you can do some simple math, and let's say you're going to open up a restaurant that has only 100 seats.
Yeah.
I would probably take John's numbers and maybe cut them in half, right? So maybe you'd only need 20 people to 25 people. And what if you're only going to seat 50? Divide it by a fourth, right? So maybe if you had only 50 seats, now you're going to need maybe 10 or 12 employees, right? Or something like that, and whatnot. So that's a good baseline. I'm glad you shared that.
So once you have these businesses open, you're gonna learn a lot of things that maybe you didn't know before. Unless, for me, I've again worked in the industry my whole life. But if you're somebody again thinking about opening this type of establishment or any restaurant, you're gonna find out there's a lot more things that come along than just running the restaurant. Like, who's gonna clean your restaurant at night?
Oh wow!
There's the hoods. If you don't know what a hood is what they sucks all the smoke up and. It has a fire suppression system in it.
And that's the exhaust.
Yeah, exactly. Your exhaust system in your kitchen. That has to be inspected every 3 months in some places and every 6 months in some places. It costs money every time. Your fire extinguishers needing to get inspected. There's so many things that come along with the restaurant. That
inspections, and more inspections.
They come in. You got to get passed. To have a liquor license to be able to sell. You have to, for your whole life, you could never have gotten in trouble and carry a liquor license, So somebody that wants to do that, you're just already kicked out.
And that's a big part of the business.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're not, right in the restaurant business, I mean, what would you say, what percentage of your sales?
Sure. So, liquor sales, liquor, beer, and wine sales at 30 to 35% of your overall sales.
So almost a third.
Yeah.
Wow. So
that's where you can sometimes make a lot better profit margin based on your food cost being around 30%, 33% food cost toward your sales.
So if somebody had a liquor license versus not having a liquor license, it could cost them about a third of their sales potentially, or more, depending on the location. Yeah. And what's worse about that is that could really cut your bottom line, because when we're talking profit, right, your net income at the end of the year, it's not just a third of the sales. That could be the tipping point that makes you a profitable business versus a not profitable business, just because you let somebody buy a glass of wine, right, with their steak or whatever.
Now, once those controllables are paid, and anything above and beyond that, just like you're saying, that's where you get, make that money.
So, and the last topic I'd like to talk about is probably the easiest thing to do, right? I'm being totally sarcastic when I say this, and that is the finances to start a business, to start a restaurant business. I mean, we're not talking about $5,000 or $10,000, right?
Well, most people don't walk into an average bank and just be like, hey, I want to open a restaurant, because banks look at you and go, we don't usually give money to restaurants unless you have a very serious, 10 restaurants or whatever, before a great history. A lot of restaurants are invested by private investors or people that give out loans, personal loans
and things like that. So that's interesting.
Or your partners, if you have partners in the business.
So I'm assuming I'm going off of what you said earlier, is about 80% of restaurants fail in the first year, which is a startling statistic, because the average business fails 50% of the time, right, in the first year. So restaurants are the ones that are actually pulling those numbers way down, and that's probably because they didn't work hard enough, or they were underfinanced, underfunded, or their food wasn't great, whatever it is. Maybe they couldn't hire good servers. Everybody that came in was upset, right?
Being underfunded in the beginning of a restaurant is terrible. Like, for instance, meeting your first payroll or being able to pay for your inventory.
Sure.
And those can be large numbers in a larger establishment.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but so what would you feel to the viewers is a good cushion as far as like bankroll requirements go? And I'm assuming, because everybody's going to have different startup costs for the restaurant. So they might spend $150,000 to open, but after that, how much money do you need in the bank?
I would base that on a period of time more than a dollar amount, because again, everybody's size of their...
Okay, that makes sense. So if you understand what he's saying, John's basically saying that everybody's expenses are going to vary, right? So if you only seat 50 people and somebody seats 500, the bankroll requirements for you to survive are huge. So I like what you said. So how many months?
I would say at least 6 months. So I would be taking my average payroll. I would be taking my average ticket cost.
Okay.
I would be figuring out how much food costs I'm spending, how much liquor costs I'm spending, and then again, my controllables, my rent, my other bills. And then I would add all that up and I'd say, I need 6 months worth of that.
Of that money.
Yep.
And that's just to survive kind of the slow times where maybe business might be a little slow and things like that. So,
I mean, very consistently in the first few months, more than likely you're going to lose money.
Yeah, that's not exciting for those of you wanting to start your first restaurant. Okay, I want to thank my good friend John. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Give me a fist bump as always. I love working with this guy. He is one of the most special people. If you ever have the privilege of meeting him and you have a restaurant, he can give you tons of pointers. He's been through it all. He's had a brick and mortar restaurant that he sold for a bunch of money. He had a food truck. We're going to talk about that on a different video. A food truck in Hawaii, right? Was that like on the North Shore or something like that? Holy cow. And then the just crazy Cinderella story of working for a billionaire family on a yacht with a helicopter pad. Who can say they've done that? Okay, so until the next video, I want to remind everybody that in business, I don't care if you're in the restaurant business or any business, it's never easy for anybody. Work hard, no matter how hard it gets. Never give up. Push hard, keep pushing, and be the hustler.